Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Paul Forchione. Paul was born with cerebral palsy, and it was so severe that the doctors told his mom that he would never be able to walk. Thank goodness for a wonderful mom and a great mindset that was not his story. He was able to overcome it and is now able to live a very active life. It wasn't easy, however, to get to that point. Today, as a mindset coach, Paul shares his story with his clients to help them rewrite their own stories to go after their true dreams and desires. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Paul. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thanks, Dwight. I do give a heck.
Awesome. That's exactly why you're on the show. I appreciate you saying that, though. Listeners, that's the whole theme and whole mission of my life is to bring forward people that have gone through trials and tribulations that have learned how to give a heck about themselves, because you have to love yourself first so that you can serve and help and love others. And Paul is definitely one of those people. So I'm so excited for our conversation today, Paul. So Paul, tell me your origin story. And the reason I talk and focus so much on the origin story is I love people. Right. I'm an introvert, hard for people to believe, but I am. But when I am with people on a one-on-one basis or in small groups, I really like knowing what happened in your life from your earliest recollections, your memories, because they really are the reason why you had to learn how to give a heck and pivot and change in your life. Or maybe your childhood was amazing and it was the catalyst and pivot to where you are today. So it's the good, bad, the ugly. There's nothing bad in an origin story because somebody can, I believe, can always learn from it. So please, Paul, tell me what your origin story, what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently.
Yeah. So as you read in my bio, I suffered from cerebral palsy. And if your viewers don't know what that is, it's lack of oxygen to the brain at labor. And as a result of this lack of oxygen to the brain at labor, it can leave one side of the body paralyzed, can affect your speech. And this is permanent. This does not go away. So when I was born, I wasn't moving the right side of my body very much. And naturally, my mother was very concerned about this. So she got me to get some testing done to see what the issue was. And it indeed came back that I did suffer from cerebral palsy. And the first doctor told my mom that it was so severe that I would never be able to walk. And when I got to a certain age, it would be a good idea to get me into a wheelchair because that was going to be my life going forward. And I had a conversation with my mom about this later on in my life. And she said that night she cried herself to sleep thinking, what's going to happen to my son? What's the struggles and challenges he's going to have growing up? And she woke up the next morning and got me ready for the day. And I gave her a look, if to say, Mom, don't let this be my story. And her mama bear started roaring inside of her. And she got a second opinion, a third opinion, a fourth opinion. She wasn't going to stop. She got a fifth opinion. Finally found a physician willing to help. And with this physician's help and me doing physical therapy 5 to 6 times a week, and my mom's unrelentless attitude that I was going to walk, I was able to walk at age 3. Now, I don't really remember that, but I do remember being put into soccer when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And at the time, I probably could run 25 to 50 yards before my leg would give out. So I'm basically just standing there while kids are playing soccer around me. And I remember going to my mom one day after practice, because this mantra stays with me to this day. I said to my mom, Mom, I don't want to play soccer anymore. This is ridiculous. People are making fun of me. I'm basically standing there where the other kids are playing soccer around me. I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember what my mom told me at that point. She said, Paul, if you don't want to play soccer anymore, that's fine, but you need to honor your commitments. So you need to finish out that soccer season. And if you don't want to play soccer after that, that's your prerogative. And I'm 41 years old and I haven't played soccer since that season. So I finished out that deal. But I got a big break when I was right after that soccer season. So I was about 6 or 7. I got surgery on my right foot to tighten up the tendon a little bit. And I didn't know how much of a game changer this was going to be. I switched schools around this time. So I was about in first grade. And I remember my first day of PE, physical education. We did our stretches and the teacher says, okay, guys, run a lap. And I'm thinking to myself, here we go again. I'm going to run 25 to 50 yards. I'm going to have to stop. These kids are going to see that and they're going to start to tease me. But because of my surgery, it was different. I was able to go past that point where I normally have to stop. And I remember saying to myself, come on, Paul, you got this, buddy. Let's go. Let's go. And I finished the lap with the other kids. On the outside, I kept it cool. But on the inside, I was like, yes, yes, yes. The first time in my life where I just fit in with these other kids, I didn't stand out. And things got easier for me because of the surgery, but I wouldn't consider them easy. So my parents got divorced roughly when I was 12 or 13 years old. So I had to switch schools around that time. And that's a tough age to switch schools. Kids have already gone to school with each other for many years. They already have their cliques. They're becoming teenagers. It's just a rough time. So just being a new kid alone, that's going to be hard. But I'm a new kid that walks with a limp and holds his right arm differently. So it was even tougher for me. And I couldn't break into the school. I couldn't make friends with the school. I was getting bullied and teased pretty much every single day. And I came from, maybe an old school mentality where I wouldn't snitch, I wouldn't tattle. And I was holding all this pain inside of me. And I wouldn't say anything to my mom or anybody else about this pain I was feeling about being bullied and teased. I just kept it inside, bottled it up. And around the same time, I was raised Catholic. So my mom wanted me to go to a Catholic high school. So so I had to take an assessment test to see where they were going to place me when I got to high school. Well, I must have bombed the test because when I met with that principal and my mom, the principal tells the both of us that they're going to put me at the lowest level possible, and she doesn't expect much from me. I don't seem like I'm college material. After one test, this principal says this to me, to us. So now I think I'm stupid. Not only am bullied and teased at school, now I think I'm stupid. So I'm crying myself to sleep most nights, just not really having a good go of things. I don't know what came over me, Dwight, but midway through my 8th grade, right before I went into high school, I was sick and tired of feeling angry and sad all the time. Those were my go-to emotions because of the environment I was in, but I knew deep down those were my true emotions that I wanted to share with the world. So I thought to myself, what could I do to change that? What could I do to distract me from these feelings so I can ignore the outside noise? And I thought, what if I set a goal for myself? And at the time, I loved baseball. So I said to myself, what if I tried to make my varsity baseball team in high school? So I started playing fall ball, winter ball, spring ball. And if I wasn't doing that, I was throwing a tennis ball against the wall. And I remember this coach coming up to me after playing a few seasons. He said, Paul, you play a lot of baseball. What do you want to do with it? And I was really reluctant. I was embarrassed to say that I wanted to make my varsity baseball team. Finally, one day he got it out of me that's what I wanted to do. And I thought he was just going to laugh it off. Like, this kid, cerebral palsy, making a varsity baseball team, not going to happen. But he paused for a second and he said, that's doable. And I'm like, what? That's doable? He goes, yeah, it's doable. He goes, but you need more people to keep you accountable to your goal. And I go, what do you mean by that? He goes, after practice tomorrow, I want you to go in front of your teammates and tell your teammates what your goal is. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. They're going to laugh at me. They're going to tease me. No way. He's like, you got to do it. You got to have people keep you accountable for your goals. So I did. I was shaken. I told the kids on the team that I wanted to make my varsity baseball team. And instead of laughing and teasing me, they started clapping for me, and I started to cry, and I felt so good. And I know this now. I didn't know this at the time, but I was changing the energy I was sending out to the kids. I was having my shoulders back, my head up. I had more self-esteem in myself. And as a result of this new energy I was sending out to these kids, they started sending a different energy back towards me. In other words, instead of bullying and teasing me, they started rooting for me. So my high school career was much, much different than my middle school career, all because of how I carried myself and the energy I sent out. So just that alone is a win. But the cherry on top of the whole thing was I was able to make my varsity baseball team as a junior and a senior. In my senior year, I pitched a 3-hit shutout. They poured the Gatorade on me, and I felt so alive. I felt so good about myself. I graduated high school, and I really start to think about that goal that I set for myself, making the varsity baseball team. Because, like I said, when I first made that goal, I didn't think it was possible. It was just something to do to ignore the noise, but I was able to accomplish that. So I started to really think about what that principal said to me years earlier as well about not being college material. See, all through high school, I pretty much mailed it in. I just did enough to stay eligible to play baseball because I thought, what's the point? I'm not college material. Just do enough to stay eligible to baseball and move on. Don't waste your time on other academics because you're not college material. But I thought, well, why not be college material? Why can't I be college material? So I enrolled into a junior college because that was the only place that would accept me at the time. And I got myself a math tutor, a regular tutor, and I went to the math lab. And I did this 5 to 6 times a week. I did everything necessary to increase my grade point average from barely a 2.0 all the way to 3.5, where I was able to transfer to a 4-year university. And I so wanted to go back to that principal and say, see, you were wrong. I was college material. But in the end, I probably should thank her, because I don't know if I would have hit the books as hard as I did in college if I didn't have her voice in my head saying I wasn't college material. So in the end, I thank her for that. So now I'm, 22, 23 years old. I have no life experience whatsoever. I have no idea what the heck I want to do. What the heck? I don't know what the heck I want to do with my life. And I had a family friend who was a CEO of a small bank. And he said, what if I hired you to become a mortgage loan officer? And I'm like, I got nothing going on. Yeah, let's do this. So he hires me on to be part of the bank. And when I got in, nobody wants to talk to me. I'm sitting alone at lunch. Everybody's shunning me. And I'm like, I haven't felt this way since middle school. And I quickly realized what the issue was. They all knew I knew the CEO of the company. So it wasn't because of my talents, it's because who I knew. So what they were going to do is they were going to chew me up and spit me out because I didn't belong there. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to prove these guys wrong. So I had an excellent attitude. I didn't complain about the workload. And from afar, I was reviewing what top loan officers did in the company because they didn't want to talk to me. So I had to kind of keep my distance with them. And I remember my first day of wanting to go out in the field and get loans for the first time. And the CEO of the company says, what are you doing? And I go, oh, I'm going to go out in the field and I'm going to get loans. I'm going to sell loans. It's going to be great. And he's like, whoa. You need way more training. You are not ready to do that yet. I'm like, no. I got this. I'm ready to go. Let's go. And he's like, all right. So I went out there and I fell on my face. He was right. I need way more training than I did. But slowly but surely, I started to realize value I could add to these clients. And more, I got more and more loans. And 2 years later in this company, became a top producer. And the people who didn't want to talk to me when I first got there are now coming to me with questions on how I was able to get so many loans at such a short period of time. And I started to really, really love the mortgage industry. And as we talked earlier, before we start recording, Dwight, it was 2008 now, and the economy tanked it. And we talked about this, and I would get a job in the mortgage industry and that company would go belly up, and I'd have to get another job in the mortgage industry and that company would go belly up. So I was really losing the luster of doing this work anymore. And I'll never forget the last place I was at. They hired this motivational speaker to drum up the sales team so that we would do more sales. And I got into it. And the presentation, the guy blew me away. The guy was tremendous. So after the presentation, I went up to him. I said, man, this was awesome. And he said he started as a life coach. And I'm like, life coach? What in the heck is a life coach? And he explained that to me, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe that's what I want to do. So on the off time of the mortgage stuff, I was getting my coaching certificate, and I started telling people that's what I want to do. And people were kind of humoring me, saying, "Okay, yeah, bud, just get loans, you life coach, whatever, this and that." And then things got real serious. Got my website up and started posting stuff on social media. And the legal team at the time of where I was working at got wind of what I was doing through all my social media. And they said, "What are you doing?" I was very transparent. I said, "I'm going to do the mortgage stuff and I'm going to do the coaching on the side." And they're like, "This could be a conflict of interest. So we'll get back to you." I'm thinking, "Oh, that doesn't sound good." And they came back to me with a 5-page report of what I could and couldn't say in the coaching world. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to make any traction in this coaching world if I follow this to the T. So I spent a year not doing any coaching, paying down all my debts, doing everything necessary to make the leap, to take the leap of faith. And a year later, I quit. And people like, "Are you crazy? You just made President's Club, man. You are a loan officer. That's what you do. This coaching stuff is pie in the sky nonsense. You'll be back, man." And I'm like, "Okay, maybe so, but I want to give it a go." And for a while, I thought they were right because I wasn't getting any clients that wanted to sign up with me. It was really, 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 really hard. And I started to realize what the issue was. How do I expect people to be vulnerable with me if I'm not vulnerable with them? See, the story I told you about having cerebral palsy, I wanted to bury that story. I wanted to tell anybody that story because all through growing up, all I wanted to do was fit in. I didn't want to stand out. I just wanted to be treated like any other kid. So if I was caught, or, if they saw me limping, I would make up some silly excuse. And if I had to go there with cerebral palsy, I was near in tears. But I thought I had to own it. I had to own my story. So I started opening up about my story, and it was shaky at first because I really didn't want to go there. But more and more times that I was telling my story, I got more confident about telling my story. And I'll never forget it. My first client ever comes to me and goes, "Paul, I don't have cerebral palsy, but I have X, Y, and Z. And I feel like you understand me. So I would love to hire you as a coach." And we just started building for there. And now I'm on a mission to have people take back their pen and write the story of their lives, not for anybody else, but from themselves. Because all through my life, people wanted to take the pen and write the story for me. And I said, "No, I'm taking the pen back and I'm writing the story that I wanted to go." So that's my story in a nutshell.
Wow. That is an amazing story, which I would expect, considering that's one of your skills is to help people rewrite their own story. Obviously, throughout the process, you've learned how to be a fantastic storyteller. That was amazing. I resonated like, holy goodness, I took like a page and a half of notes, listeners. If you're driving and listening to this, when you're in a fixed spot, listen to it again and take notes because there was so many nuggets of information. One of the first things that really resonated with me was honor your commitments. And I used to be that way. Well, my kids are all adults now. When I say I used to be that way, they're all growing up, but I used to tell my kids, "Okay, you don't want to do that? Fine, but you got to finish." And it used to drive them crazy, but I'd say, "You know what? You made a commitment to be there. Even if you're sucking or you don't like it anymore, even if you're going to be benched and you're not going to get played, you made a commitment. You got this many games left, whether it was soccer, whether it was they were in gymnastics or dance, you have to finish." So I love that. Honor your commitments. Listeners, that is so important. People watching, I watched Paul's face when he said that too. It is something that did resonate with him at a very young age, still resonates with him today, and it really resonated with me. So I appreciate you sharing that. Going from getting the pain of being bullied and teased, and we become very even more introverted and we hide from people. I went through that. Many people that I find that are successful today as life coaches or just in anything that they do, if they were bullied or teased, they actually, if they're able to flip that script, which you've done, you actually become a very compassionate and a very empathetic person. Hence our connection to our good friend Michelle too, her empathy business. But so I really appreciated that and holding that pain in. Like I did that too. I was extremely bullied and teased when I was a kid because I had health issues, not to your extent, but I had severe health issues with my, asthma. And then I have a spine disease that I still suffer with today. But, you know, there's so much that you and I have in common. I was raised Catholic, Catholic school, had people, you know, label me, teachers, oh, poor little boy, you're going to have to nurture him and he's going to have to do this and that. And if I listen to all those so-called professionals, air quotes for the listeners, I wouldn't be where I am today either. I didn't necessarily have the parental push that you did. My dad was very just do it. My mom was very coddling to me, if that makes sense. So even as an adult, in early years of my adulthood, I was still like a fish on a shore, flipping, wishing it was back in the water. I I had to figure out how to get back into the stream and sail. And for me, it was great people that I associated with that started mentoring me and telling me, don't listen to the noise. Don't listen to the story people, like you said, have written for you. So I love the way you put that. Listeners, just think about that. In life, people are writing your story if you don't write it for yourself. So take charge of it. And as a side note, reach out to people like Paul. I've met Paul personally. He is an amazing individual. And after you just listen to his origin story, if that doesn't sell you to the fact that he can help you rewrite your story that you've been telling yourself or letting other people write for you, you know, I don't know what would help you out except for maybe listening to that again and again and again until you get the confidence to understand that no matter what trials and tribulations you're going through, you can accomplish anything in life. So I appreciate that, brother. That was great. Like I literally, listeners can't see it, but that's just one side of the notes.
Wow.
And I started it on this side, right? So give me the feels, brother. I appreciate that. So, Paul, your mom was a big influence on you not taking the doctor's word that you could never walk. What was your mom's story? That she had the tenacity to not take medical opinion as face value. Was there something that did she go through things that you're aware of that maybe made it so that she refused to let her son have to go through that sort of thing?
You know, I've had a conversation about that with her as well. She was grew up as the middle child, so she was always the pleaser, making sure that the old child, the younger child, everybody was getting along. That was her personality. So she was pretty laid back as a child and a teenager, and she told me she was very, very timid growing up. And she goes, I don't know what it was, but when I had you, I just gained so much confidence in myself. When I became a mother to you, I don't know, like this mother bear just started raging inside of me that I never had that power before. But when I had that power, when I saw your face saying, "Don't let this be my story," I just changed and she wasn't gonna take no for an answer at that point.
Wow, just got goosebumps. You know, I when you brought it up prior, and now you brought it up again when she looked down at you and you're giving her that look like about your story, that just give me chills again. That's so powerful that most people don't realize when you have children, it changes you, right? It'll take the most gruff person and make them docile in certain ways because their child is, you know, their everything, and the child expects their parents, they don't, well, not necessarily expects, but you're expected to make sure you raise this child and nurture them. And, you know, so that's amazing. I'm glad that helped your mom too, find her own version of strength and, you know, changed her story. Like you said, she was timid and laid back, and that's awesome. And all it took was the birth of a handsome dude like you. So that's great. I appreciate that. You're welcome. So can you share with the listeners and I, what are some of the things your mom did to help you believe and have a never quit attitude and get where you are today? Was there anything specific lessons wise or things that she still talks to you about? I don't even know if your mom is still alive. I guess I should watch what I present, but yeah. So what are some of the things that your mom, was there any single, like, you know, things that she would say, little phrases or things that she would do to keep you driven?
Yeah, you know what? I remember most about my mom and you know, having conversations to this day with my mom is there's never any problems with my mom. There's always solutions. That's her attitude. It's
I like
always,
that.
there's always a solution to a problem. So if I come to her with a problem, she comes at me with, what can we do to get over the problem? She does not dwell on the problem at all. She does not give me any time to feel bad about the problem. She's going, okay, this is not cool, but let's figure out a plan on getting it over it. So that's helped me through my life. Anytime I struggle, I think about my mom or have a conversation with my mom, and she's like, what are we going to do to get over it? What are you going to do? What's the next step? What's the next step in your journey? I'll never forget it when I wanted to make that leap of faith to get out of the mortgage industry and get into coaching full time and quit my job. I asked my mom, I'm like, this is what I want to do. And she said, how bad do you want it? What do you mean by that? She goes, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to do this? And I go, really bad. Then you need to do it. And you need to go full force, and you need to go. You cannot look back. You just got to keep going forward. It's going to be hard, but you got to do it. And you got to do things that you got to push that ego aside. So for instance, for a couple years, I was Uber driving, and I would run into kids I went to high school with. Well, they're adults now, but I would run into people that I went to high school with, and I would be delivering their food or picking them up or this or that. And they would go, man, things are tough for you. And I'm like, no, they're not. No, I'm right where I want to be. I'm right where I want to be. And it was all because I was able to have this freedom of doing this job where if I had a client or I had something going on or a podcast or engagement, I could stop right there and then do the engagement or talk to the client and then go back to, making money again. So I just put that ego aside. I mean, now that I'm, in my early 40s and I started this in my 30s, I had the maturity of putting down that ego, because I would not have been able to do that in my 20s. I would have been like, I'm college educated, blah, 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 nonsense. But I've learned to put that ego aside and say, who cares? And if things get bad again, I don't mind getting back in the car and Uber and driving and doing what I have to do to make some money.
So, yeah. So basically your mom's attitude is, okay, you got shit going on. What are you doing about it? Don't wallow in it. And that's driven you to never let anything slow you down long term. That's awesome. I love that story. And yeah, for listeners, because I don't know who, I could have listeners that are Uber drivers and skip the dishes, DoorDash. It doesn't matter. They could be doing whatever. Don't let your family tell you that what you're doing isn't important. If it pays your bills, it supports your family, supports yourself, it's honorable. It doesn't, there's a pecking order in a life where people have figured that people in the service industry are not as important as somebody that's a CEO of a company. And I beg to differ, because I don't believe in that. So I like your attitude that I'm right where I need to be. I need to make money. I need to survive on the side. I'm continuing to develop and do other things until such time I don't have to do this. And that's the type of mental toughness that people need to develop and find somebody to mentor and coach them. You were lucky, because a lot of people don't have great origin stories with a parent that's super supportive like you. And I noticed that just in your little bio. And that's why I focused somewhat on your mom, because too many people complain about their upbringing, don't realize, and I'm not saying that yours was picture perfect, but you've chosen to focus, and so did your mom, on the positive, on uplifting and making sure that Paul continues to climb. And indirectly, even back to the fact of you being born, you were her catalyst for her to change too. So it's really heartwarming, actually. I really appreciate that. So Paul, what are some of the trials and tribulations you went through to lead the active life you lead today? You've shared a few things, but what other trials and tribulations have you gone through up to this point?
As far as a child or adult, or
whatever you want to share, what are the things that you can think of that might help resonate with the listeners, to help them realize that they can rewrite their own stories?
Well, let's go into the back into the coaching a second, because for those first 2 years, like I said, I had a rough time wanting anybody to even talk to me. And I, I was like, I felt like a failure. I felt like I don't know what I'm doing here in my life. And I'm thinking, I'm doing the Uber driving, I'm doing everything I need to do. But there would be times in at night, I'm going, should I go back to the mortgage industry? I mean, I was a star there, but I am not getting any traction here in this world. And like I said, I remember talking to somebody and telling them I was coaching this and that. And they're like, who are you? They said that to me. Who are you? Why am I going to tell you anything about myself? I don't even know who you are. And that resonated with me. And I'm like, this person's right. They don't know who I am. I need to be vulnerable with them first, so they know they're in a safe place. They know where I'm coming from. They know that I have empathy for what's going on in their lives because they know like you said, my origin story. And that was key. That was huge. And once I started doing that, I mean, it just opened up for me. That vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. And now I embrace that.
That is awesome. I've been telling people for quite a while, especially when I have, amazing conversations and people that are vulnerable, like you're being with me. This is a calling card that you can utilize as well. So you could say to somebody that is a little bit indifferent and not sure if they can trust you, or you can't even sit down and tell them your origin or be vulnerable with them. Hey, listen to this podcast. You'll learn something about me. So it's a calling card. That's another reason why I podcast and want to interview exciting, interesting people such as yourself, because it helps uplift my listeners, gives you the opportunity to use it as a tool to uplift others. It's a win-win. And I've 60 some episodes in, and there's very few from start to finish. We're not done yet, but that are it's going to blow people away. I guarantee people that are listening to this are getting the feels, like I call it. Do you get the feels when you listen to a podcast or listen to a book or you have a conversation with somebody and you can't wait to see that person again, talk to them again, maybe actually meet them, right? That's what you want to do, is you want people to go, wow, I get to meet Paul. This is exciting. Or, hey, Paul, you know what? It's kind of distant. I listened to this, or you know what I mean? I appreciate you sharing your story with me, Paul. And you're right. Storytelling is the key. Vulnerability is the key. It's tough though, because wouldn't you agree, when you're vulnerable with people, as you mentioned, you're opening yourself up to criticism. And that's the toughest thing that people can't get past, right? Wouldn't you say that? I think vulnerability is something that's really hard to teach.
It's extremely, and society, right? And especially for males, right? You're not supposed to show weakness. You're supposed to be tough all the time. The anger and this and that.
Yeah.
And I think that's silly. I think that men should be able to show their vulnerability just as much as women. I think that it's good for growth. I mean, I told you when I was a kid, and you alluded to in your life too, that you had to bottle up your feelings as well. And that was the wrong thing for me to do. I mean, looking back in my life, that was one thing that I said to myself, I wish that I was vulnerable in middle school. If I was vulnerable in middle school and really seeking help, my middle school career might have been different if I actually seeked help, but I didn't. I bottled it up. I cried in my bedroom by myself. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell anybody. And as a result, it was just, I hated going to school. I just hated it. I just dreaded. I was like, what are they going to do to me today? I didn't want to seek help. I came from that attitude of you don't be a snitch. You just don't be a snitch. You don't. And that was
middle school sucked for me too, brother.
Yeah.
I'd have to say it was probably the worst years of my life. But yeah, you're right. Like you also mentioned too, that you had nights of self-doubt. Well, and I talk about it. You've heard my speech. I talk about it in my book and coaching, quiet desperation. I had so many nights in my childhood with quiet desperation, feeling helpless and not knowing how to let it out, even as an adult, because really our teachers or people that are mentors in our life normally, like normal education system, are they really teaching us to be vulnerable? No, because they live in with a facade. They're going in to teach you math, science, English, whatever they're teaching you. They're not really looking to say, oh, look at Paul, he's all timid in the corner, not really sharing in class. They don't care. They just want to get done their day. And I'm not saying that all teachers are like that. So I do have teachers that listen to my show. They know that I love teachers, but unfortunately, it goes not just from teachers, it goes through how they were taught. It goes all the way back to the colleges and the universities, not teaching them about vulnerability. And it goes back to our initial education system from, early preschool to middle school to high school. It goes back to our parents. And that's why what you are doing and what I do for people is so imperative, because nobody's taught people from the moment of their origin all the way up to where they are now how to be vulnerable, how to get rid of that self-doubt, or what I call quiet desperation. So, kudos to you for everything you have accomplished and are continuing to accomplish. And, listeners, I've been following Paul we actually started in a group together. He started prior to me, but I jumped into the group during the pandemic, speakers, authors, and coaches. And Paul and I have met one another, and I can't wait to continue to see your journey unfold as you continue to rewrite your story, because you're going to rewrite your story, I believe, the rest of your life until your last breath. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I want to add something to what we're talking about, the culture, because you and I were raised Catholic. So I don't know if you had the same experience with the Catholic culture, but they had this culture of tell it like it is, and they know better, like the authority figures, they know better.
Yes.
And to question that, you don't question that because they know and you don't know. And I think that has to do a lot of for me, especially with the principal saying that I wasn't college material. I really felt like, just because of probably her growing up, that she was doing me a favor by saying that, telling the truth or what have you. So that's one thing that I would love to have changed, especially in the Catholic.
Oh, it's terrible.
To allow the kids to be a little bit more vulnerable and not be so harsh with your words, because words hurt. Words do hurt. And like I said, I thought about that through high school. I did not excel in high school at all because of those words that she said to me, that I was not college material. I believed it. So I acted accordingly to that. I did not try. I just did enough to stay eligible to play baseball. But if she said something different, maybe my grades would have been higher, just that belief system. So that's going back to what we were talking about, the schooling and stuff. And I'm not bad. I mean, there's some great things about the Catholic religion.
Oh, of course.
I don't want to back on the Catholic religion at all, but I've grown up in that, and Dwight, you did too. So that's an observation that I had about growing up in that environment.
Well, see, the Catholic school system, I learned a lot from it, but there was also things that I didn't like about it. So my Catholic faith, I'm still a practicing Catholic. I treat it like a buffet. I treat like a buffet. And people say, what do you mean? Well, if you go into a restaurant that has a buffet, do you eat everything that's there? Well, no. You might try something, you'll take a little helping, you don't like it, but something else you take you really like, so you'll go back and get a seconds and thirds or whatever, and you come back to that buffet again, you'll never touch that one dish because you know you didn't like it. Why can't we treat life like that? So the Catholic faith itself, I treat it like a buffet. My priest knows that, the deacons, my friends, the nuns in my church, they're all friends with me, but I'm very, very opinionated and blunt. I'm very kind about it. I've learned and worked hard at becoming a wordsmith. Like you said, we need to learn how to use our words, and people don't teach that. But yeah, there's changes that need to happen within the church. It's slowly changing, not quick enough. But then on the public system, we have so our school system in our country is actually split up, right? We have the Catholic school system as well, and we have the public system. And I have clients that complain about the public system. The same complaints, so teachers that say inappropriate things, or they say things like you were said to by that principal, and it becomes a mental anchor for that child for the rest of their school years. And that child doesn't necessarily share it with their parents, because what do the parents normally do? Oh, they're a principal or they're a teacher. So they elevate that person into a status that what they say is right. And that's wrong. That's part of our wrong part of our society in regards to education, both on the Catholic and on the public side. We need to, that again, back to what I was saying already, dial it back to university and college and start having more classes on how to be real, how to be vulnerable, how to be sincere about your words. Watch what you say, because that word can cut like a knife, and that cut never heals. Right. So I appreciate you bringing that up. But yes, there's definitely things that need to change in the Catholic Church, in the Catholic system. But take aside the Catholic stuff, there's issues on the other side of the fence too. They both have their problems. So listeners, especially those that listen to me a lot, treat like a buffet, right? That's why I don't necessarily jump from I've had a bunch of my friends, they go to church to find the right thing. I've had parents that have pulled their kids from schools, public schools or Catholic, and go from school to school to school, because instead of just accepting this is the circumstance of where you're at, working within it and leveling up and helping, your kids become stronger, and chasing to another school, your problems follow you, right? Because you're insecure. You're still the insecure Paul. You're still the insecure Dwight. You still have those insecurities that are going to be projected. People are going to pick up on that energy, and you're going to be labeled again. Wouldn't you agree that it's just, we have to start as a society from a very young age, just teaching our kids to be confident wordsmiths, confidence in their abilities, and that they have the seeds of greatness and that they can accomplish anything as long as they have the proper support.
Yeah, and also to be kind. I think that is so important, to be kind to other people. You don't know what that other kid's going through. Like, people ask me, what do you think if you saw these kids in middle school that bullied you, what would you do now? And I go, nothing. I forgive them. I don't know what was going on in their lives. They could have had a horrible upbringing from their parents, and they didn't know how to handle themselves. So they lashed out at me because I was one of the weaker kids, because they didn't know better. I don't know. So I forgive them. I have no ill will towards any of them, because, like I said, I don't know what was going on in the backstory of their life, their origin story.
And I appreciate you saying that. I used to teach my kids that all the time and tell them, like, I'm sorry, Johnny or Sally did that to you. I'm sorry this teacher said that. And this isn't to excuse their behavior, but we don't know what's going on when they go home. We don't know what's going on. Maybe they had a death in the family. Maybe somebody's really sick. Maybe they're having marital problems. Maybe they're having so many different things. That doesn't excuse the fact of what they did or how they treated you. But we have to be cognizant and be kind, even when we are being the downtrodden or the person that's being subjected to adversity or harshness from other people. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't reach out to parents or other people in our lives, like as adults, reaching out to a mentor and sharing what experience, because sometimes that mentor can say, you know what, and dial this back to what your mom said, right, and taught you that, okay, that's too bad. What are we going to do about it? What can we do differently? So I think about your mom, but that's that type of person we need, all of us in our lives as adults, is somebody that I can say, hey, reach out, Paul, you got a few minutes, let's jump on a call, right? This is what happened, Paul. What do you think, brother? I'm so emotionally tied into it. I can't see the forest for the trees. I can't see past the noise. I can't rise above it. And Paul can be a person that goes, you know what? That's okay. I hear what you're saying. I understand your frustration. You have a right to be frustrated. How about we think about it this way? And that's what we all need in life. And it's something that so many of us don't. And you've been blessed to have your mom, and you probably have other people as well as I do. I have people in my life. I don't have my parents in that light. Not that, again, that it's bad. They're great people, just both different. I have other people, though, as adults that I can reach out to and say, you know what? I'm in a suck moment right now. Can you help me can you help me rise above this moment? Because I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about that. I don't have bad days anymore. I've coached myself, I coach others, and I work at that to only have bad moments within my day. And then again, reach out to specific people that can help me get out of that suckage, right?
Mhm.
And drive above it. And then
Yeah.
sometimes it's not people. Sometimes it's just I start listening to a book or a
Yeah.
podcast, right? Or I close my eyes and I sit on my couch and my dog snuggles with me, and I just and I think to myself, okay, why are you letting this bother you so bad?
Yeah.
Don't let it ruin your day, right? But
Yeah.
don't you agree though, we have to work on this forever? It's not something, I don't think that's ever going to become like a habitual thing. I think we're always going to, because there's so much negativity in the world. I think we're always going to have to work at it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have limited beliefs all the time that I have to work through. The thing is, it's being aware of these thoughts in our head. I think that is huge. Like, what are we thinking about on a daily basis? Is it more positive? Is it more negative? And if it is negative, don't beat yourself up because it's negative. It's good that you're first aware of these negative thoughts, like you just alluded to. Okay, I have these negative thoughts. What can I do about it? Well, how can I change it? And for me, and what I tell my clients to do is when you're having these negative thoughts, think about something that's going well in your life right this moment. It could be you like your blue shirt, you like your family, whatever it is. Think about something positive in your life because your mind starts to prime itself on what you're thinking about. I always like to use this analogy. When you buy a new car and all of a sudden you drive that car around the city, all of a sudden you see that car all over the place. And you're like, I never saw that car before I bought this car, but now I bought this car. It's because your mind's seeking it. It's the same thing with your positive and negative mindset. Like you could have a negative mindset and you could be driving to work and get a flat tire and go, just my luck. This would happen to me. I would get a flat tire going to work. And I would say to that individual, yeah, because you're looking out for all the bad. And the easiest way to shift that is what are you grateful for right this moment? And if you do that on a daily basis, like you said, because you can't stop it, you got to keep doing it your whole life. You start to seek out the positive. Like you get something on your phone, free coffee, up, the day keeps getting better and better and better.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. I have a coach that I've followed for about 17, 18 years, and he talks about the same sort of thing where you buy a vehicle and then you see it all the time. And the science behind it's pretty interesting, actually. It's a specific part of your brain. He teaches about it. But it's so true. I've had vehicles that I haven't owned in a decade, and I still see them on the road. It's like, damn, like what, I don't want to see a family van no more. So, you know what, you brought up so many good points. You just gotta, what's going right, what's going positive. And one of the biggest things that I start my day off is I'm grateful. I have gratitude for, some mornings it's not as long as other mornings because I've maybe slept in 5 minutes longer than I should have. But normally I try to wake up and I have gratitude and think about especially if I have negativity in my brain. But if I find when I go to bed at night, when I do my prayers and then I have gratitude as well, I wake up more refreshed too. I wake up in a different state of mind because now my brain's been feeding on that positiveness as opposed to, oh, I'm laying in bed and feeling sorry for myself. And I had so many nights of those.
Yeah.
Quiet desperation. It sucks, right? It does. But
Yeah.
it's a reality of life that we're going to work on this till the day we pass away. But the most happy thing about this is that there's people such as you and I and so many others out there that are one person at a time. We're going to make a difference in this world because I'm tired of people saying that one person can't make a difference. You can. Paul is, I am, and listeners, if you are, congratulations. If you want to be that person, reach out to Paul or I and let us help you rewrite your story. I don't specialize in that, so Paul would be the person for that, but I can help you rewrite your story in a different way, right? You need people such as Paul and I. You don't need just one person in your life. I have multiple mentors, and each mentor fulfills a different part of my my emotional, my financial, my IQ. It strengthens my life, and is okay with that. but start somewhere. And I think rewriting your story would be the biggest, positive for you in your life. So definitely at the end here, we'll make sure we have Paul's contact information so that you can reach out and you too rewrite your story, because we all have the seeds of greatness. We just need to find the right person to water it, and Paul can be that person. So can you tell us an example of someone whose mindset you helped heal as a coach? Can you tell us a story? Again, you don't have to use the
Yeah.
person's name. I'd appreciate hearing a story of somebody you've changed.
Yeah. I remember a phone call that I had this a few months ago. One of my clients, and she was having a rough go of it. And I remember getting on the call with her, and I can tell by the tone of her voice. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, she's going through it. So I just let her go, because I think that's one of the things that I like to do as a coach. I like to actively listen, allow my clients to have a voice so they can voice their opinions, voice what's going on, because I set up a safe space for them. So I'm not judging them, and they can just be vulnerable and tell their story of what's going on in their life right that moment. And she was just going on and on and on. And I, like you, Dwight, I was taking notes on what she was saying. And I just let her vent, because sometimes people just need to vent. They need to get it out. So I let her go. And when she was done, I went through her story and I said, what about this? You were doing this really well. How about this over here? I was starting to point out the things that her mind was tunnel vision negative. Everything was negative, but I was able to open up her mind to see all the positive things that she was missing in her story. And I'm not saying by the end of the session that she was doing cartwheels, but her voice was different from the beginning of the call to the end. And that to me was a win.
Yeah, well, of course. And like that's amazing. It is that actually very it's not complicated to do life coaching. The biggest difficulty I find, because I've been life coaching in my finance business, I do a lot of 6 inches programming before I can get to even the numbers, because people are so caught up in their negative life story. Like you were saying, people need to understand that there is positive in their lives, and it's not as complicated as they think it's going to be. And really, when you're working with the willing, it's important that people understand that. You know what I'm talking about. That woman was willing. She was willing to share. You took notes and you picked out the things that to reprogram, to rewrite her story in that one meeting. I don't know how the end result has been with this lady, but you already made a difference in one meeting. And that is powerful. Listeners, just think about that. In one meeting, he was able to at least invoke in her a thought process difference, which he picked up in a way that her mannerisms and her voice was. That is powerful. And that's how quick it can be. And he's right. She's not doing cartwheels. She's not going to be like all of a sudden tomorrow, her whole life is completely different. But Paul was the catalyst to start a change for her. And that is amazing. And that's a very honorable thing that you did and you're continuing to do. So where is this lady still getting coached from you?
Oh yeah, she's getting coaching from me, and she's starting to change things. She came to me after a poor divorce. I don't want to get into too much of the
Yeah,
details.
of course, you don't have to.
But yeah, so she's dealing with that and all kinds of stuff, but she's starting to build herself up. And now, one of the small, she says it's a small thing, but I think it's a huge thing. She's starting to date again, and I think that's a beautiful thing, that she's starting to get herself out there and start to meet other people, and eventually, hopefully, she'll meet somebody that's more suited for her. So,
Resonates at the same level.
yeah.
That's what we all want. People call it our soulmate, and we can call whatever the term it is. We just want somebody that's not necessarily our carbon copy. That would be really boring, but we want somebody that I can appreciate who we are, that can feed can feed one of our 5 love languages, that can help elevate us, and we can do the same. We can be reciprocal. And that's admirable. That's amazing. And exciting for her.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. She's a great person. I learn a lot every time I have a phone call with her. So she's probably teaching me more than I'm teaching her. I'm not really teaching her. She has the answers inside of her. I'm just bringing it out. I'm not telling her what to do at all. I'm just bringing it out.
That's what a good coach does.
Yeah.
That's what a good life coach does. And even outside of life coaching, that's what a good human being does. And you highlighted the fact of just being kind. Sometimes people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And you highlighted that earlier too. We just need to listen. We just need to become better listeners. I work so hard at that. And I find, though, I don't know if you can agree with this or not, the better I become as a listener of podcasts, the audiobooks, going to speaking conferences, watching even a television show or a documentary or a movie, I hear things that I never used to hear in the past. I was only surface level on everything. When I became more cognizant that I need to listen, I need to work on my listening skills, everything enhanced in my life, which obviously enhanced my ability to deal with my clients, to help them be more vulnerable and help them level up between their 6 inches. So yeah, our listening skills are so imperative. And most of us lack the ability to listen and actually be present, right? Because how do most people listen, Paul? If you and I were going into a coffee shop and we were trying to visit, we wouldn't be even as far as we are in this conversation now after 3-4 times of getting together for coffee. Because what's going on in the coffee shop or the restaurant? Distractions. Our phones going off. We're not really cognizant and present with Paul. Paul's not really cognizant and present with Dwight. And I've learned to be in that restaurant situation now. That doesn't happen. People will say to me, did you see that go on? Did you see that person? No. Why not? Because I'm here present with you. I was listening to you. I was watching you. But that's a learned skill. It'd be nice if we could sprinkle some little dust on our heads and our kids and our friends and family. And all of a sudden we're all better listeners, but that just doesn't happen. We have to work at it. You're probably working on it every day yourself.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. A couple points there that I like to make. One is, when I talk to different people about coaching and what I do, and they're like, well, I don't need a coach. I have friends. And I go, well, that's great that you have friends. And that's a wonderful thing. But when you have a friendship and you meet, like you allude to, like coffee, right? You tell your story and what's going on, but there's going to be bells going off in your head and going, okay, you know what? I've been going off too much of my story. To be a good friend, I need to ask what's going on in their lives. Whereas when you're like in a coaching practice with me, you don't have to you hired me. You hired me to do a job. So you don't have to ever say, hey, Paul, what's going on in your life? You don't have to do it because you hired me to help you. And when you have a friendship, I do that. I certainly do that. If I'm going through something, I have bells in my head. When I talk to a friend, I go, okay, you know what? I need to kind of stop now. I've been going off too much. I need to ask how they're doing. And on top of that too, is when I was younger, in my 20s, having conversations with my friends, there'd be times where I'm really halfway listening to the conversation because I'm already thinking about what I'm wanting to say next. I'm just politely being quiet so that I could just get out what I want to say. And I'm picking up that my friend's doing the same thing. So like you said, we're not really getting anywhere. It's kind of just surface level talk because we're just polite enough to be quiet for a moment so that they can say what they want to say. And we're not really listening because we want to just talk about what we want to talk about. And like you said, it's something that we all need to work on. I work on it every single day. It's a skill that I feel I'm good at, but I could get better.
Well, and you brought up a valid point though, when you were saying to these people, like a friend is you're waiting to talk and you're not really there to support that person. Whereas a coach is just making it about you. That coach or mentor may be vulnerable and share stories so that you can connect, right? So that you can always have that heart-mind connection. But you're so correct when it comes to people are sitting there waiting to talk, not really listening. And when they do give advice, they're telling you most often what you want to hear so they can get onto their stuff. they don't want to hear no more crap from you. So they're going to go, oh yeah, boo hoo. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay. Well, here's about me now. Right.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not telling you what you need to hear. They're telling you what you want to hear.
Mm.
So a good friend, right, is going to be somebody that's going to say, I can listen to you. They're going to be pushing you to go to some place where you're going to get some objective feedback, right? And that's what a
Yeah.
mentor and a coach can do for a person. And so many people don't understand. They're confused about what coaching is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Paul, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Great question. I feel that every single person has a unique talent. And it's up to us as a person to find out what that unique talent is. And once we find out what that talent is, share it with the world to see. Because if you believe, you can achieve.
That's awesome. Yes, it's true. What a mind of a person can believe, you can achieve. Like, look at all the things that have happened in our history of the world that people, oh, they're never going to accomplish that. Politicians, corporations, influencers, oh, this is never going to happen. And a few years later, it's happening, and they got their foot in their mouth, right?
Mhm.
So never believe people, what other people have said about you, what society, even if somebody hasn't said it to you and you're so introverted and so sheltered and you're living the life of what television, the media is terrible for that. Don't let others program your reality. Your reality is your reality by choices that you've made. And if you're feeling lousy all the time, you need to have somebody again rewrite your story, help you rewrite your story, bring it out of you, not specifically write it for you, help you rewrite your own story using your own words and your own experiences. And a good coach and mentor like Paul, all the things that he's shared in this podcast can connect with you, can relate with you. You don't want to have somebody mentor or coach you, and this may sound harsh, that isn't willing to be vulnerable, doesn't have proof or evidence that they've gone through the school of hard knocks, the journey of life, and struggled. Because the best coaches and mentors are those that can relate. Even though the stories may be different, there's always similarities. Wouldn't you agree, Paul?
Absolutely. Empathy is huge, huge, not just in coaching, but in life. Having empathy for other people, it's a powerful thing.
Yeah, and to me, empathy is a superpower.
Mhm.
Right, that is a superpower, along with kindness, that people need to practice all the time. And again, stuff that we could go on and on about it, but the school system needs to be able to learn how to teach that. In all levels of government, they need to learn how to live with empathy and kindness,
Yeah.
in corporations and stuff. But that's another podcast. So our time is almost up, and I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what is the best way to reach you, Paul?
Two ways. One way is through my website, a call to action.coach. And you could book an appointment with me there. And I'm old school too. So I put my cell phone on my website. So if you want to call me and set up an appointment that way, I can do it that way as well. I always do a free coaching session. I think it's important that we gel, because we may not gel. And that's okay. Because Dwight and I, we have a circle of coaches. And sometimes I'm not the right fit, but I'm in my head going, you know what? You would fit this coach, because I feel if I do right by that client, things are going to go right for me. So I'm the client first, and then we'll figure out going forward. But I always feel like I want to do the service right for the client. And if I feel I'm not a fit, I tell them up front, and I'm honest with them. If I am a fit, then we go forward and we start a practice. But I think it's important that we're client facing and we're honest about that. Second way to get in touch with me is through my Facebook group, and Dwight's a member, and I thank you so much for being a member of Rewrite Your Story. It's a group where we all come together and we are able to share our stories. And there's no judgment. We're only there to support each other. We have meetup meetings once a month, again, where we come together and we allow people to share, and we just support and we lift each other up.
Yeah, that's amazing. I appreciate you giving all the information. Listeners and viewers, you can go to giveaheck.com/podcast to check out the show notes. I'll have all the information that Paul just mentioned in the show notes, and you'll be able to reach out and access and start rewriting your story of life so that you don't have to have those nights of quiet desperation any longer. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Paul. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.